Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Brent Venables, the Oklahoma Sooners, kicking off fall camp, and this is by far the biggest fall camp that Brent Venables has had during his time at Oklahoma. Want to talk about some breakout candidates, but I don't want to just talk about breakout candidates. I want to talk about some of the most important names that Oklahoma needs to have breakout in 2025. And it kind of goes back to how we've talked about this football team throughout the summer months. Look, if you close your eyes and you envision everything working out for Oklahoma, you're envisioning a team that goes out and win 10 football games because that's what the ceiling is. I think how ugly it got in 2024, people don't recognize that this roster that Oklahoma has is much more dangerous than a lot of people perceive. If you're a Kentucky fan, and again, hopefully ain't no Kentucky fans listening. This is not targeted at Kentucky, but if Kentucky fans close their eyes and envision everything working out, 6 or 7 wins is probably the ceiling of that football team. That ain't the case for Oklahoma. As much as people want to assume that Oklahoma is not all that dangerous because it was really dang bad on offense last year, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, when you have a quarterback like John Mateer, who I think is one of the best in the SEC, and you have an Oklahoma defense, a defense that I might trust the most in the SEC going into 2025, you can do some damage. And that's what Oklahoma fans want to see in 2025. Now, if that's going to take place, who are the names that we need to hear some positive buzz about during fall camp? Fired up to get into this one. I went off-roading a little bit, off the beaten path. Going to talk about some names that we haven't talked a ton about during the summer months before we get into it. As always, most importantly, to the Oklahoma fans, let it rip in the comment section and try to call your shot a little bit. Everybody's talking John Mateer, and we'll talk John Mateer as well. But there are a lot of other really important football players on this team that we need to see produce in 2025. Who are the most important ones? Let it rip in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Now, without further ado, I'm going to set this one up like this. Yes, is John Mateer very important in terms of Oklahoma winning games? Yes. My biggest concern about Oklahoma is not John Mateer, is not if he's a good football player. I've been very vocal throughout the summer. I think John Mateer, from what I saw at Washington State, he can be one of the best quarterbacks not only in the conference but in the country. So we're not going to talk about John Mateer in terms of a breakout guy. I'm more concerned about what's around John Mateer. You got a legitimate difference maker at quarterback with what I think was the best offensive coordinator hire that we saw all offseason. I think he got the two most important things figured out with this Oklahoma offense: quarterback, play caller. But you're in the SEC. It can't only be the quarterback. You have to have weapons. You have to have things come together around the quarterback position. I'm going to go with Isaiah Satanga. Now, I promise the Oklahoma fans, I did not just blindfold myself and point to a random wide receiver. I have reasoning behind it. If you want to go Giovanni Gibson, wouldn't argue with you. If you wanted to go Zion Kearney, wouldn't argue with you. Deion Burks, you can't go. Deion Burks already broke out at Purdue. Like, to the Oklahoma fans that went back and watched Deion Burks at Purdue in 2023, we all know what this kid can do. He can be one of the best pass catchers in the country. Why Isaiah Satanga? I look at him and say, the quick game. You look at Oklahoma and say, well, what's our biggest concern about this football team going into 2025? Is pass protection, right? Is this Oklahoma team good enough in pass protection to maximize John Mateer? And look, let's just be quite frank about it. I don't think it's going to be elite for Oklahoma. You hope it's not a liability like it was last year, and I have some confidence that it will be better. But this is not going to be the best offensive line in the SEC. I think we are all at peace with that. Well, how do you work around that? The quick game. And Isaiah Satanga, he's that kind of guy. I mean, you go back and look at Isaiah Satanga at Arkansas, 70% completion percentage when he was targeted, only 3 drops in his career. A guy that's average depth of target is not any more than 10 yards, but he does a lot of work in that short intermediate route tree. I look at Ben Arbuckle and say, look, he is a players, not plays kind of offensive coordinator. And what I mean by that is, yeah, he has some scheme that he likes to get to, but he's going to work his scheme around what his personnel is. And go back to him at Washington State, that offense looked a little bit different in 2024 with John Mateer than it did with Cam Ward in 2023. He's a guy that's going to lean into What's my personnel say? And how can I call plays to best fit my offense from a personnel standpoint? Well, pass protection going to be a question mark. It's going to be a question mark week 2 against Michigan. What's the best way to work around maybe some questions in pass protection? The quick game. And a guy like Isaiah Satang, look, is Isaiah Satang the best wide receiver in the SEC? No, probably not, but he's really dynamic with the football in his hands, and he thrives with some of those quick game type stuff in his route tree. I look at Isaiah and say, we're really, really important pass catcher for Oklahoma. And I think the question is, all right, we know we got one in Deion Burks. We need 2 or 3 more guys that we trust in 2025. I think Isaiah Satang can be that guy. And we've heard all the right things from him spring practice, summer workouts, heading into fall camp. Very excited about what he can bring. Number 2, I'm going to go Eddie Pierre-Louis, but I'm going to go with really just the young offensive lineman in general. And maybe this is a bad take, but this is kind of the take that I have. Look, I feel like I kind of know what Jacob Sexton is, and I kind of know what Jake Taylor is. And I could see the Oklahoma fans saying, well, maybe cut them some slack. They were playing last year, but were playing banged up, clearly not 100%. Now, I'm willing to concede that. But when I close my eyes and envision this football team winning 10 games, I look at it and say, these young offensive linemen, they got to be ready and they got to hit in 2025. That's the recipe for Oklahoma taking that jump in 2025, at least in my opinion. Why Eddie Pierre-Louis is the guy that stands out to me? Because he's nasty. Like, can he be a guy that we trust in pass protection? But more importantly, this dude's an ass kicker up front. He has the potential to be absolutely dominant in the run game. Going back to the conversation we had with Isaiah Satang, the one question mark we have about Oklahoma is the pass protection going to hold up so we can maximize John Mateer? Well, what's one way to really protect your pass protection? Run the football. Stay out of these third and long situations where these opposing defenses are just pinning their ears back and getting after the quarterback. You have a quarterback in John Mateer who I think can provide a lot of value running the football. Outside of Lenore Sellers, John Mateer might be the most dynamic runner of the football that you see in the entire country. You went out and splurged on Jaden Ott. For all the haters that want to say that Jim Nagy don't want to spend, he went out and spent on Jaden Ott because he knows that we got to run the football well in 2025. You have the pieces to run the football, but it starts up front. We figured it out last year. Look, if you cannot hold up on the offensive line in the SEC, don't matter how much talent you have on your roster, you ain't going to be able to run the football. I look at Eddie Pierre-Louis and say he can be the engine of this run game in terms of what he can do moving bodies off the line of scrimmage. Can we trust him in pass protection? I think so. But can he be a difference maker in the run blocking department? I look at Oklahoma and say, look, if this team goes out and win 10 football games, these year 1, year 2 offensive linemen, I think got to be good. And then maybe kind of year 3 guys like Logan Holland as well. But I look at Fasusi. I look at potentially Ryan Foje. I look at Dan Akinkumi and say, we need him. I think we need him in 2025 because that's where the best version of Oklahoma's offensive line, to me, resides in the young talent. Because I think I know what these veterans look like. And, hey, maybe they're not as bad as they were last year because they were banged up, but I don't know if they're difference makers. I think the young cats very well could be. They weren't ready last year. Can they be ready in 2025? Defensive side of the football, a guy that we haven't talked a ton about. I feel like a lot of my conversation around Oklahoma has been pushed towards PJ Adebawore and a guy like David Stone and a guy like Danny Okoye, some of these young guys that are going into year 2, year 3 that we want to see break out. And look, they're all important. If you wanted to add them to the list, you wouldn't get any pushback from the kid. Marvin Jones Jr. This kid was a 5-star. Can he play like a 5-star at Oklahoma? We haven't seen it yet during his time at Georgia. You saw maybe some flashes of it at Florida State, but nowhere near the consistency. Here's the thing with Marvin Jones Jr. Can he kind of replace what Ethan Downs gave you? I don't know if he's going to be an elite pass rusher, but he's a big physical edge defender. He's long, he can strike, and he can get off blocks. We got our elite pass rusher in our Mason Thomas. I think if you're Oklahoma, you're looking at, hey, can Marvin Jones Jr. come in and be dominant against the run and really help in run support? So we're giving our Mason Thomas the ability to rush the passer in third and long. That's what I'm looking at for Marvin Jones Jr. Look, this kid's talented. As much as we talked about the young cats and PJ and a guy like Danny Okoye, I think Marvin Jones Jr., he's got a level that he can reach. He's got another step to his game. Can he reach that in 2025? And I'll say this, there's going to be a lot of attention going to R. Mason Thomas. I mean, every single time an offensive coordinator is game planning for Oklahoma on defense, they going to be circling R. Mason Thomas and saying, hey, how do we deal with this kid? Well, he's going to get chipped by the tight end. He's going to get some double teams. He's going to get some running back help as well. I mean, they're going to be basing their offense on how can we block up R. Mason Thomas. And when teams are doing that, do we have a guy on the other side that can take advantage of some really beneficial matchups? Maybe it's Marvin Jones Jr. It starts with him supporting the run, but I think he can be a dude coming off the edge as well in the pass rush department. Tell you a kid that we're sleeping on here, Kendall Daniels. I mean, why are we sleeping on him? Because he's in the 2 deep on my depth chart. You're not really sure what position he's going to play. Is he going to play off-ball backer? Is he going to play cheetah? This kid rocks. There was a reason that Oklahoma went out and got Kendall Daniels in the portal. I look at him and say he's played over 2,300 snaps, 240 tackles in his career, 24 TFLs, 7.5 sacks, 5 interceptions. There might not be a more productive football player that we see in the country in Kendall Daniels over the last 3 years. He's a chess piece. This is where I love to fit. Look, I'm not really sure how Brent Venables is going to decide to use Kendall Daniels. But I know one thing. I trust Brent Venables to get the best out of his defenders. And I know there was a reason that we went out and got Kendall Daniels, whether that's to play linebacker, whether that's to play cheetah. I ain't really sure how it's going to look, but he's a really good football player that can be really versatile. And that's probably where you want to start the conversation. You play Michigan week 2, maybe Kendall Daniels playing a little bit of cheetah, saying, hey, Kendall Dolby, we think you're really good in coverage. Y'all know I'm a Michigan fan. Michigan ain't necessarily testing Oklahoma on the boundary with our pass catchers, but we gonna run some 2 tight end sets and try to run the football. Maybe it's beneficial to have Kendall Daniels in his ability to support the run play the cheetah week 2 against Michigan. Well, then you play Auburn in a couple of weeks and say, well, now we want Kendall Dolby on the football field at cheetah. Maybe we're playing Kendall Daniels a little bit more as an off-ball linebacker, give us a little bit more coverage ability. There's a lot of different types of offenses that you're going to see in the 2025 season. Having that chess piece, and I know he's a little bit positionless, and I think that's why he's not getting talked enough about. He's, in my opinion, one of the best defenders on this football team. Brent Venables is going to figure out a way to let him on the football field and impact the game. If Oklahoma reaches their potential on defense, I think it's going to be a large part of Kendall Daniels being a difference maker at a variety of different roles with this Oklahoma defense. Number 5, Cortland Guillory. Need him because the depth at the cornerback room is a question, right? As much as I love Gentry Williams, and I know the Oklahoma fans do too, it's not like he's been the most reliable from a health standpoint over the last 2 years. Eli Bowen was awesome as a freshman, but he's coming back from an ankle injury that I think he missed most of spring practice with. And so I look at Cortland Guillory and say, I think the cornerback room is talented, but I'm not sure what the depth is. Can Cortland Guillory be the Eli Bowen of last year? And what I mean by that is I didn't have Cortland Guillory pegged as a year 1 impact guy. But everything we've heard out of spring practice is that this kid's ready to play in the SEC. Can he provide not only quality depth, but in certain times, could he be a reliable piece that's on the football field for Oklahoma as a freshman? Because I think at some point, you're probably going to need him. And I look at all the difference makers at wide receiver that Oklahoma has on their schedule and say, we got to have cornerbacks to deal with the freak shows that we're going to have to deal with at the wide receiver position. Think he's really important too. These are the guys that, off the beaten path a little bit, important football players to Oklahoma in 2025. Look, we're going to talk a lot about John Mateer. Trust me on that. There are a lot of other players and positions that are important for this football team as well. Many of y'all know that week 2 matchup's so fun. Both teams, I think, have monster potential, Oklahoma and Michigan. Both are very in similar situations. New OCs, new quarterbacks. Can we get the offensive line going? Are we good enough at pass catcher? Dynamite defenses, both of them. Going to be really fun to talk that matchup and talk these 2 football teams over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.